Hello and welcome. I am Excellent and this is my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you 10 stories that have been featured on Discovery Show channels over the last 10 years. And the reason I chose these is because they're each horrifying in their own way, yet nonetheless horrifying. If you would please give this video a thumbs up and share it, I would greatly appreciate that. If you would like to be subscribed and you are not, why not? Go ahead. And if you'd like to know when my content goes live, well, just push that bell. Alright, and here we go. This one is about two parents who raised a mass shooter. This was in Omaha, Nebraska. And from an early age, something was noticeably different about Robbie Hawkins. His father, Ron, and his stepmother, Candace, had to contend with Robbie's very explosive rage. They tried medication, they tried psychiatric treatment, and none of this made any difference. Once, Robbie even attempted to poison his own stepmother by putting rat poison into her drink. Finally, after years of enduring Robbie's abuse, Candace divorced Ron, and she moved out. On December 5th, 2007, Robbie, who was then 19 years old, entered the West Roads Mall in Omaha, the Van Mar department store. He opened fire, killing 8 people during what was a horrendous event. Then he turned the gun on himself. In an interview on the show Evil Lives Here, Candace is quoted as saying, "The word sorry doesn't even touch how I feel to the other victims and their families and everybody that has been affected by this." Which hails back to a question we've asked on this channel many, many times. Is there nature or is there nurture? Can you make a serial killer? Can a serial killer be born? That's a question we may never fully understand. And which was Robbie? All right, next one. On August 13th, 1996, 18-year-old Brooke Webber's life was going to change forever. That night, her boyfriend, Jeremy Wolf, brought her along to collect money from a man who was named Gary Simmons. Brooke remembers that when they arrived, the porch light was off, and Gary was sitting on the steps. She said that he looked kind of creepy to me. Brooke and Jeffrey went into the house, and that's when she heard gunshots. She said she looked up, then she looked down when the gunshots went off, and when she looked up again, Jeff fell. Gary and an accomplice took Brooke into another room, tied her up, and put her inside of a metal box. Brooke says that she can just remember that the box was complete darkness. She was locked in there, and she was told that how well she performed determined if she would live or die. After she escaped, the events of that night have continued to haunt Brooke to this day. On the series premiere of Shattered, Brooke is quoted as saying, "I'll never have that girl back that I used to be. Never. I don't trust people. You know, I sometimes wish it was me and not him, because the hell is down here. He's in heaven. He's an angel. And it's hard down here." When the parents realized that their son was the arsonist, George and Margaret made that agonizing decision to place that call to the arson task force. In the aftermath, friends abandoned them. The Kellers lost their family, advertising business, and eventually their home. Their son's arson spree had claimed 3 victims. Paul Keller is currently serving a 99-year prison term. 25 years later, after telling their story of tragedy and recovery on the show Evil Lives Here, George and Margaret have received many messages of support from all around the world. This next one happened in Dryden, New York. And on the morning of December 23rd, which we call Christmas Eve, 1989, Sharon Groman was planning to head to Dryden, New York to spend Christmas with her sister Dodie Harris, along with Dodie's husband Tony and their 2 kids, Shelby and Mark. That's when the telephone rang, and it was Sharon's brother. He told her to come to his house, and when she did, Sharon learned that Dodie, Tony, Shelby, and Mark had all been shot to death in their own home. The horrific quadruple murder was the first in a series of very strange deaths and tragedies that would go on to haunt the small town of Dryden for 10 more years. In the series called The Village of the Damned, Sharon returned to the Dryden home where Dodie and her family had been killed more than 27 years after the event. And Sharon revealed that she has learned to forgive her sister's murderer, Michael King, who died in a police shootout in February of 1990. This next one is from San Luis Obispo, California. Larry Hobson is a former homicide investigator and interrogator for the San Luis Obispo Police Department in California. He says that, and I quote, "Some people were put on this earth to be evil, and he believes that one of those people was Rex Allen Krebs." So, maybe nature. In November of 1998, a 20-year-old college student, Rachel Newhouse, vanished from a pedestrian bridge in downtown San Luis Obispo. There was so much blood at the crime scene that it suggested that it had been a violent struggle. Then, 4 months later, another college student, Andrea Crawford, was abducted from her home by an intruder who had slipped through her bathroom window. When convicted sex offender Rex Krebs emerged as the number 1 suspect, Officer Janice Mangan approached Krebs after joining in the search of his home in a remote Davis Canyon. And when Janice discovered that he had a book filled with handwritten names of women, she was particularly horrified to find her own name on that very list. She remembers that she screamed like a 6-year-old girl. She wondered if a potential serial killer had been perhaps watching her, and she would have been a victim. It would be up to investigator Hobson to extract a confession from Krebs in the interrogation room, and to discover if Rachel Newhouse and Andrea Crawford were still alive. Both Hobson and Mangan recall the terrifying case in an episode of Evil Talks. Can you even imagine that? This tragedy for 2 young women turned out not only to save several more lives, but also a police officer who found his list of names. This next one is from Poughkeepsie, New York. Sherry Schaefer remembers very little about the morning her life nearly ended. Early on March 22nd, 1989, her troubled 16-year-old brother Brian Britton went on a shooting rampage at the family home in Poughkeepsie, New York. Sherry's mother, father, and younger brother were all killed. As Sherry tried to escape, Brian shot her in the head. Somehow, Sherry managed to make it back to her bedroom, and when police responded to the home, they found Sherry clinging to life. In the 29 years since, she has been unable to remember anything about that massacre. Brian was arrested, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life. But Sherry still lives in fear that he will be released. Every 6 months, her brother is up for parole. In an episode of Evil Lives Here, Sherry was quoted as saying, "It never ends for me. It's not fair that I have to keep reliving this." She wishes that she still had the answering machine that she used to have when they were little, because her mother had done the voice on it, and she just wants to hear her mother's voice. 25 years to life for killing your whole family? Wow. That's incredible. The next is in Portland, Oregon. On August 31st, 1987, in the remote Molalla Forest outside Portland, a bow hunter made a horrific discovery. What he found was a mummified human hand. A thorough search turned up not one, not two, but 7 total bodies, all women. At first, the detectives believed that this would be the work of the notorious Green River Killer, of course, and he was still at large. However, these victims had been stabbed to death, and the Green River Killer was known for his strangling. The trail of disturbing clues finally led investigators to a 33-year-old mechanic who was named Dayton Leroy Rogers. In a wood stove in Rogers' shop, they found metal bra hooks and the remnants of burned clothing. But most disturbingly, police learned that the killing was not enough for Rogers. The evidence showed that he first tortured his victims, that he enjoyed the fear in their eyes in their last moments. In an episode of Grave Secrets, Kelly Cervantes remembers being only a 10-year-old child when she saw her mother, Nani, for the last time. She said, "I didn't get a chance to hug her or kiss her or say a proper goodbye to her. I just got to wave from the window. And that was the last time I would see my mother." Nani Cervantes was one of the 7 women found in the woods. This one happened in Lansing, New York. It was just 2 weeks shy of Eliza Bush's 2nd birthday when she vanished in a snowstorm on February 2nd, 1990. Her mother, Christine Lane, had dressed her up in a pink snowsuit, planning to take Eliza and the dog out for a walk. But after she stopped to use the bathroom, Christine discovered that Eliza was missing, and in the driveway outside of her apartment in Lansing, New York, she was horrified to find just one of Eliza's pink mittens. For days, volunteers and police searched the woods, but they found nothing. Then, suddenly, Christine reported receiving a package in the mail. Inside that package was Eliza's other mitten. In a tearful, televised plea to her daughter's kidnappers, Christine begged, "I just want her home before her birthday." In a strange twist, a witness had seen Christine mail the package to herself. When confronted, Christine Lane admitted that her entire story was a lie. She led investigators to Eliza's body, which she had buried in the woods half a mile from her home. 9 years into her sentence for second-degree manslaughter, Christine Lane was released. On an episode of Village of the Damned, retired Tompkins County investigator John Huther said, "She put on a good act, didn't she? A very good act. That someone could be so cold as to do this? Carry on the charade, knowing full well it was a lie." She got 9 years. That is stunning. The next one, Beverly Shores, Indiana. On September 1st, 1981, when Eric Witt was 15 years old, he shot and killed his father. Why? Because his mother told him to. Growing up, Eric's father beat him for every infraction. After forging his father's name on a failed spelling test, Eric remembers his father hitting him until he couldn't stand anymore. He said that he used to use me like a freaking piñata. As time went on, Eric's mother, Hilma, began telling him that his father needed to die. She even poisoned her husband's food, but when Paul survived each attempt, Hilma told Eric he was going to have to do the job himself. Eric remembers that on that night he died, there was a phone call from his mother, and she said, "I'm going to be back in 10 or 15 minutes or so, and if he's not dead, I'm leaving. I'm done." Years later, the plot came to light. Eric spent 11 years in prison. His mother received a 90-year sentence. Now free, Eric Witt spoke about his experiences in an interview on Evil Lives Here. He's quoted as saying, "I have to get up every day knowing that I took out one of the most important figures in my life. And what I can do is live my life and make it a good one, because it cost a hell of a lot to get it." I don't understand some of the sentencing guidelines. This child should not have had to go through that. And yes, his mother should be in jail for 90 years. But when somebody gets 25 years for killing their 2-year-old child, it's crazy. Okay, the next one is called Haunted by Death, and it happened in Lacey, Washington. This one happened in Lacey, Washington. In July 2001, Elisa Jones returned from a fishing trip. She went to her mother's house and knocked on the door, and her mother didn't answer. So, because her mother's car was in the parking lot still, she went and found the property's assistant manager and asked them to open the door for her, which they did. Elisa remembers, and this is a quote, "I went down the hallway to my mom's room, and the first thing I saw was her books all messed up on her bedside table. And before I could even understand what was going on, the assistant manager lifted up the bedskirt on the side of the bed, and she began screaming, 'Oh my God, she's in there.' Lori Jones had been murdered." Elisa and her sister Beverly have been haunted by their mother's death ever since. Evidence led investigators to a man named Michael Bray, and if I could tell you how haunting that is to me personally, I would love to, but I enjoy not being sued. Someday, during a podcast, maybe I'll somehow bring it up. You know me, I ramble a lot. He was known locally as Cowboy Mike. He had raped and strangled Lori after meeting her in a bar in Olympia. Then, in another shocking tragedy. In May of 2017, just after telling her story on the show Shattered, Elisa learned that her father, Leonard, had also been murdered. His murderer was her brother, Jacob, who has been charged with the crime. Thank you for coming to my channel. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Also, if you'd like to be subscribed, please go ahead and do that. And if you'd like to be notified when my content goes live, go ahead and click that bell. And it's almost time for the 31 days of Halloween. If you have a story you'd like me to narrate, a true paranormal experience, please send that in. If you would like to write a scary story, please send that in. If you would like to send in a voicemail with you telling the story, go ahead and send that in. And I will give you full credit. We would really like for the community to be involved with this 31 days of Halloween. Thank you, and good night.